Alright, so my next component just came in, and it's the processor. It's a Core i5 10th gen. The model is 10400. I bought it off of Lazada because it was the cheapest one I could find. It cost me about 8,900 pesos, or close to $180, and it was the cheapest. It actually came with this free mouse. It's a USB, and so thankful for the gift. I will link to the store in the description. Uh, I was initially thinking of buying it off from a computer store website called DynaQuest PC here in my country, but with them it cost 9,200 pesos, so it was about 300 pesos more expensive, or $6, $6, and I was gonna get it from them, but uh, I was hoping that they had an ITX, but their ITX board was about 8,000 pesos, or 2,000 pesos, or $40 more expensive than the one that I got from Calio, Philippines. Now, so I decided to get the board from Calio, Philippines. Now, I was thinking of getting uh, the processor from Calio, Philippines, but when I checked with them on Shopee, their 10400, the i5 10400, actually costs about 9,500 pesos. That's 600 pesos more expensive than this one, or roughly about $12, 12 US dollars. So that's when I decided, just I was thinking of buying it all from all the same store, so it would be less of a hassle to buy them, just like some of my friends would do. But I was really aiming to get the cheapest build that I can get, and I was penny pinching a lot. I was, if I can save like 100 pesos, like that's like $2, 200 pesos or $4, I would do it, because if I save uh, from every piece that I got, or from every component, it could save me enough money to actually spend more towards another component. So that's what I did. Now, uh, this is the Core i5 10th gen. You know, it's the 10th generation from Intel. The latest generation is actually 11th gen, and in 2021 they're actually coming out, but I opted to get this one, the 10th generation, simply because it is a bit cheaper than the 11th gen. But the difference, I think it's not so much. The difference between 10th and 11th gen, I think the 11th gen will have a little more advanced feature from the 10th gen, but they would still have the same cores, which is the number of cores in the CPU, and probably have hyper-threading. So it's not much of a difference, but the price uh, you know, would not be worth it. So I opted to get this one. So, as you can see, this is the front of the box, and you have the side. On the other side, you have the barcodes, some warnings, labels, and uh, you have something on the back that describes the their Intel. It's well, getting hard time focusing. So nothing much there. I would suggest that you actually just go to Google and just type this in, and when look for the link that says arc.intel.com to get the correct specs. Now I am gonna open this, but I'm gonna describe or I'm gonna go through why I went with this one. When I was actually researching to getting the processor, I was actually thinking of getting the i7, particularly the 7th generation, the 7700 i7, or at most the i7 7700K. If there is, usually they have a, Intel has this naming standard that they have a suffix, a letter, and if it says K, it means it's overclockable. So from the base frequency of like 3.6 gigahertz, if you overclock it, it could go to as much as twice that. It could go up to 5 gigahertz, and that's the speed. So if you could afford the processor and the processor that has the K, just go for it. Now I was thinking of getting that one, but those are still expensive, being even though they're 7th generation. So that means they're like 3-4 years ago they came out, but they're still expensive. And of course, the only way you could get them is from the secondary market, and they would be secondhand. So they would have been used, and they could have been abused, especially if they overclocked it. And of course, that would shorten their lifespan. So I just opted to get the newer one, the 10th gen. But from there I was thinking of, I did some research that, one of the best models actually is with the i3. Uh, there's this i3 model, the 10100. Uh, its its base frequency is 3.6 gigahertz, and it could boost up to 4 gigahertz. But then the amazing feature for that one is that it has hyperthreading. So normally your i3 doesn't have hyperthreading, and the cores are really just around 2 cores each. It's like a dual core. Uh, but the but with the 10th generation, all of the processor line now have uh, hyperthreading. That's basically a technology with Intel that allows them to run like 2 instruction sets per core, effectively doubling the cores. So if you have an Intel processor uh, that has hyperthreading, if you had a 4-core processor, that the thread would be about 8. So back then, i3 didn't have hyperthreading, and it's usually just had like 2 cores. But the 10100 has 4 cores, and it has 8 threads. So it's basically the i7 from years back, and it only costs like around 7,000 pesos, or like $140. And there's this version, again with suffix, which means with the letter F, that's actually only cost 5,000, around 5,000 pesos, or around $100. And it also has the same base frequencies of 3.6 gigahertz, and it can boost up to 4 gigahertz. The only difference is that it doesn't have the uh, built-in graphics processor unit. It's called an IGP, or the integrated graphics processor. But this one, the regular ones, the ones with no suffix, and the K ones have IGPs. It means that you don't need to buy a separate video card to attach to your motherboard, so you can output the display to your monitor, because That's how computers uh, display or output videos. Before, processors did not have those, but then AMD started making those, so you didn't have to buy a separate video card. But now, they're coming back with those. Intel is back with those uh, processors with no graphics GPU or GPU, so they could sell it a little bit lower. But I decided that I would forgo the 2,000 pesos savings, $40, because I think it's better to have a built-in GPU with the processor. Because if in the future, if you feel that the processor or the graphics is too slow, or it couldn't help you with whatever you're doing, you just go out and buy the graphic card that you would need. But you can start off with just the basic built-in graphic processor, the IGP. Because if you bought a processor without the IGP and you bought a separate video card, if that video card breaks down, you won't be able to use your PC anymore because there's no video output. Whereas if you buy the one with the built-in IGP and you decide to attach a graphic card later, if that graphic card ever breaks down, you will still have the IGP to fall back on, so you won't have to worry about an emergency of going out and buying a graphic card. So I was thinking about getting the i3, the 10100 or the 10400F without the video card. So I decided no, I'll go with the one with the IGP. But I was again thinking about, should I go with the 10100, which cost about $140, or should I get this one, which is about $180, so about 2,000 pesos, $20 more. But I was thinking, the i5 actually, although it has lower base frequency, it's around 2.9 gigahertz. It's better, I think, because of the physical cores. This has 6 physical cores as compared to the i3's 4, and because of hyperthreading, it has 12 threads. So this processor or the operating system would see the processor as to having like 12 cores instead of just 8 with the i3. And I'm planning to run virtual machines on my PC because I am developing software, so I need to have several versions of OS to be able to run those, so I can run my software on those, especially Mac OS. I'll be developing iOS apps, so the most logical choice is to go with the higher cores. So that's it. So again, you have to look for this in the website of Intel to see this proper specs. This supports about 2666 megahertz of memory, so I bought those. And I think it can support about 200 to about 128 gigs of memory, but I'm just getting 16 gigs for now and gonna upgrade probably later to about 32. So I'm gonna open this, but if you can see, it's not focusing. Okay, so there, see it, it's the i5-10400. Now let's open it for a while. I don't have a cutter, I just use this one. Okay, so let's open it up. And then you have a board, cardboard box inside, and you have the processor on top. You have this uh, warranty card, I think, and then it comes again with this manual, Core i5, right? And it has a sticker. You could peel this off and place it on your PC case to make it go faster. No, I'm just kidding. And then you have the CPU cooler. Now, I know a lot of you use computers, but some probably do not. So I'm just gonna describe what this is for as soon as I can take it out. Alright, so this is a CPU cooler. As soon as you pop the processor on the board, you have to put this on top of the processor. So as the name suggests, it helps to cool the processor. IC components, a lot of thermodynamics. If you run electricity on them, it generates heat, and heat isn't good for electronic stuff because they're gonna burn out. So to help with dissipating the heat from the processor, since you can see the processor is like, it has, you know, metallic part on top, to help dissipate the heat from the inside and into the cooler. The fins will help with dissipating the heat away. It absorbs, and again, law of thermodynamics, and then the fan will cool down the heat from the fins. Again, it has this on top. It's a pre-applied thermal paste. You can just leave it at that. You don't need to buy a separate thermal paste. The thermal paste actually helps to connect this the surface of the processor with the surface of the heatsink, so it's better spread out to touch every space here. So this is gonna, as soon as you apply it, this is gonna spread out. But you could buy a more better conducting thermal paste out there. You can just Google them. I forgot what thermal paste that I used to use back in early 2000s, and up to the last time that I built a computer on the early 2010s. Also, you can buy off-the-shelf CPU coolers. I'm gonna replace this eventually, but I'm gonna start out with this. That's why I bought the boxed processor. You can actually might be able to find processors that are called tray types. So if you see people selling processors and they say it's tray type, that means it only comes in the tray. This part doesn't have the retailer box, and it most likely won't come with a CPU cooler. So if you buy it with the retail box, it's gonna come with the cooler, and I suggest you just stick with this because of course Intel engineers made this. It's cheap enough to be able to protect your processor from burning out. But you can buy aftermarket coolers. They're as cheap as like 300 pesos right now, about $6. I saw one again over at Lazada. You can buy another option, which is the liquid cooler. It uses instead of just transferring heat via this aluminum fins, it actually has uses heat pipes with liquid in them, and then on and then actually sorry, they use liquid using a radiator. uh, there's a part that is placed on top of the processor, and then it has tubes going to a radiator but it does the same thing but it uses liquid. The radiator has vents, and the water that's heated from the part that's touching the processor, they go through the radiator, they get cooled down via fans that's blowing onto the radiator. So you could buy those, and I've seen one as cheap as about a thousand pesos, or like $50. No, sorry, it's $20. So you can up to choose those. Okay, so that's it. Uh, this is the Intel i5-10400, which I'm gonna use and gonna attach as soon as the other components come in. Alright.